It is the rematch that came together on 11 days' notice. Alexander Volkanovski replacing Charles Oliveira, taking on Islam Makhachev. Of course, these guys fought back in February. And, of course, Islam, once again, no question, he's betting favorite here. Minus 240, plus 220 for Volkanovski. For Makhachev, he's 8,700 on DK. 7,500 over there for Alexander Volkanovski. And, this, to me, one of the hard things about breaking down this fight, Pete, and I don't know if you kind of have the same theory, is it's just this whole 11-day notice for Volkanovski stepping in. He has to cut from 181 to 155 pounds. Of course, at being Abu Dhabi, they get a little bit of extra time to recover here. But that, to me, is like, we always hear the cliche in the fight game. The guy who lost in the first matchup has the advantage going in the second matchup. I just don't know if that cliche fits for this matchup.
Yeah, it's not ideal circumstances, for Alexander Volkanovski, clearly. I mean, he's been dealing with some lingering injuries, one of them being an arm issue, and was going to take the rest of the year off and was basically going to come back at the beginning of next year. For whatever reason, he answered this call because I don't think that he could live with himself if he declined a rematch against the guy who beat him. So he's very hungry to avenge the loss for sure. But I do think that Islam Makhachev is clearly, top 3 pound for pound fighters in the world right now. What he can do to you, he can strike well enough. And then his wrestling is just so overpowering and his control time is just so great that he can win and bank rounds. I still think that he's susceptible of getting finished the later the fight goes, no matter what. But against Alexander Volkanovski, who outside of his camp, you don't know how much he's been in the gym. You don't know how much he's been, training hard. Staying fit is fine, but being in fight camp is completely different. And clearly Volkanovski hasn't been in fight camp. That doesn't mean he can't go out there and knock out Islam Makhachev in rounds 1, 2, or 3. Especially if Makhachev has a terrible cut or, if he exerts too much energy early on. I did like what I saw from Alexander Volkanovski in the first one. I really did, because I do think in a full camp that he beats Islam Makhachev. I really do in a rematch with a full camp. I think that he can make the adjustments, spend the time with Craig Jones as needed. They've been mixing in some training with Bang Tao as well, like some of the instructors, the Hardwick brothers. So I don't know if this is the situation for him to win though, because Volkanovski is going to be significantly undersized and he's cutting a tremendous amount of weight, short notice, arm injuries. I think there's some things that Makhachev can do to really stifle the offense of Volkanovski, and it leads to utilizing his kicks from the outside. The front kicks were fine. The round kicks, I think, are automatic. Anytime that he wants to stay at that range, Islam Makhachev can throw those round kicks, and I actually feel like Volkanovski is somewhat susceptible to head kicks. He's somewhat susceptible to head kicks and knees up the middle. And that's something, if I'm a part of Islam Makhachev's camp, I'm thinking about a shorter guy. How do we, just hit him on the chin with something? And it's going to be a knee or it's going to be a kick. And then when he's thinking about that, about the striking, that's when we incorporate our grappling. So I really want Volkanovski to win. I'm going to be rooting like hell for Volkanovski to win. But I have this weird feeling that Makhachev kind of puts a stamp on this fight. Maybe he hurts Volkanovski on the feet with a knee or an uppercut to the shorter man. And then it leads to a submission finish. But yeah, I think that Makhachev at 8,700 is one of the best values. And Volkanovski is clearly one of the best underdogs, but definitely not in an ideal circumstance to go against the number one or number 2, arguably, pound for pound fighters in the world, and Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, I mean, that's, as you're talking there, I mean, that to me is also kind of goes to what we were talking about a little bit earlier when we were talking about game theory of looking at ownership and seeing where it is. Could we potentially get a little bit of a value on Islam? Just because I do think that a lot of people are going to look at Volkanovski as saving salaries. Of course, if you want to check out our friends over at Stokastic, they do have an offer for the Fight HQ listeners that is in the show notes if you want to check that out. When we look over at Prize Picks, so we got 4 props on Islam, 55.5 significant strikes, 22.5 fight time minutes, 3 takedowns, and a fantasy score of 105.5. The two, Pete, that stick out to me is the fight time and the takedown. I would say takedown would be the preferred prop I would want to go in this matchup. I would want to go more than 3 takedowns. I based on kind of your breakdown, I would sense that you maybe are sensing less than 22.5 fight time minutes, even though I think I'm kind of in the thought, I don't know, I just think it goes 25 minutes again.
It's hard for a guy on short notice to go 25 minutes if he's going to get put in bad positions. Like, I mean, like, say what you want. Volkanovski was in bad spots, and he was in threatening situations. Like Islam had his back, and he did fine with the defense for sure. I would just love another complete camp with Craig Jones and those guys. I think that could really work wonders. But on 11 days' notice, it's not like he's in a favorable matchup stylistically. So I think of those prize picks that you mentioned, I would probably say the fantasy score would be my favorite. I think that he's going to get well over that. I just have a feeling that Islam's going to do it, even though I'm clearly going to be rooting for Alexander Volkanovski here to pull off the upset and become the lightweight champion of the world.